Do you want to be ahead of the game for the latest in arts, music, cuisine, and entertainment across the Middle East's most dynamic capital cities? Al Monitor is proud to launch our City Pulse newsletters, focused exclusively on local news, starting in Riyadh, Dubai, Istanbul, and Doha. Each week, our on-the-ground writers in these cities cover the latest cultural happenings and trends, so you have everything you need to know for the best local experiences. To subscribe for free, go to almonitor.com, that's al-monitor.com, and sign up on our newsletter page.
Welcome back to the Al Monitor Brief. I'm Adam Lucente. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi traveled to Saudi Arabia on Tuesday for a state visit. The trip, his first since 2019, was set to include talks with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, as well as boost energy and strategic ties between the two countries. The visit was also expected to focus on the planned India-Middle East-Europe corridor, aka IMEC, seen as a counter to China's Belt and Road Initiative. Modi decided to cut the visit short following the attack in Kashmir later on Tuesday. At the time of recording, Tuesday evening Eastern Time, at least 28 tourists were confirmed dead in the attack by suspected militants. Indian media reported that Modi opted to return to India early after the incident and would arrive Wednesday. However, the shortened trip still offered insights into what India wants from Saudi Arabia, as well as how the two countries are navigating the Middle East conflicts and the effects of U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs. My guest this episode is Al Monitor's Gulf correspondent, Jennifer Gnana. Jennifer takes us through the key takeaways of Modi's Saudi trip, offering her analysis on India's priorities in the Middle East, IMEC, and more. Hope you enjoy. Jennifer, welcome back to the Al Monitor Brief.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. As we know, Prime Minister Modi cut short his Saudi trip, opting to return to India after the attack in Kashmir Tuesday. But what were the main highlights of the trip, and what did we learn?
I think in terms of the optics, this is Modi's third trip to Saudi Arabia. It was his first time in Jeddah, and he arrived to a really warm welcome. The Saudi Royal Air Force had deployed F-15s to welcome his official aircraft, and he was met by, the Indian community as well as Saudis. I saw a video of a Saudi man performing a patriotic Hindi song, and there were lots of celebrations. It was very jubilant, which was in complete contrast to what happened in India a few hours later. But in terms of how he was received, it was certainly a very, very warm welcome, and it shows the strength of India's relationship with Saudi Arabia and also with the Gulf states and how it's evolved. He is a bit of a celebrity in the Gulf. He visits very often. He's got personal relationship with a number of rulers in the Gulf states. The Saudi Crown Prince has visited India, and they have big projects both in Saudi Arabia as well as in terms of developing a logistics corridor in the region. So he is seen as a very, very important figure now in the Gulf.
Modi, like you said, has been to Saudi Arabia before, but not in several years. Why do you think the Prime Minister chose to go to Saudi Arabia now?
This visit has been on schedule for a while now. It's a state visit. Modi has visited a number of Gulf states recently, and I think the visit to Saudi Arabia was one that was well considered and was in the works for quite some time. Saudi Arabia is really important to India. It is currently the third biggest supplier of crude oil to India. India has been buying a lot of Russian crude. Iraq is also a key supplier. Saudi Arabia has also been looking to invest in India's refining projects previously. But I think in terms of the timing, Modi has very close personal relationship with Trump. Mohammed bin Salman, Saudi Arabia's crown prince, also does. So they have a lot in common. They have a lot to talk about. And there's also this project called the India-Middle East Economic Corridor, which was launched when Crown Prince Mohammed visited India during the G20 in 2023, and that has been put on hold for some time since the October 7 attack. And that is a big project which Trump has previously said would be a great idea to revive. So I think there are many areas of mutual interest. It is time that, India and Saudi Arabia, which seem to be on the same side of the US's interests in the region, they have a lot to really come together and really develop. Now that this incident has happened, it is likely that they would have to arrange a separate meeting and discuss some of their broader ideas.
That's a good pivot to something else from your analysis that I want to touch on. How does the development of India-Saudi relations relate to the effects of President Trump's tariffs and also efforts to counter China in the region?
India is really concerned about the tariffs imposed by the Trump administration. Saudi Arabia is also concerned about tariffs, even though the tariffs imposed on the Saudi economy are only 10%. India has a higher rate of tariffs, around 26%. While Modi and Trump have a close personal relationship, Trump has called India a tariff king. India has a very protectionist economy, even though Modi is considered a more business-friendly leader in to come from India. India's economy in its institutional structure is very protectionist. And across the board in India, when it comes to business leaders, business organizations, even the common man, most people are opposed and extremely angry about the tariffs. JD Vance is currently visiting India with his wife, who's Indian origin. And that is not entirely being seen in a very positive way across the board. There are protests against his visit by some farmers' groups because of the impact of tariffs on the Indian economy. For instance, India's tax structure as a whole is quite punitive, and if there are external levies that would be passed down to millions of people in India, that is likely to raise inflation, that is likely to be terrible for the economy. Now, at the same time, India has a very strong voice within BRICS. It has previously inducted the UAE as part of this group. Saudi Arabia was invited to be part of it, but has so far declined to be part of this grouping. Now, BRICS, which is seen as an anti-Western alliance by Trump and by some Western leaders, also helps India and the Middle Eastern countries that are part of it navigate, very evolving structure when it comes to tariffs. They've held meetings with each other, consultations. India and the UAE, for instance, have something called a CEPA agreement, which is a comprehensive economic partnership agreement, a free trade agreement. And that has been extremely beneficial when it comes to navigating, tariffs or an evolving economic reality. So this visit by Modi to Saudi Arabia will touch on a number of issues relating to this, relating to freer trade between the two countries, but also in terms of big projects like the India Middle East Economic Corridor, which is something that Trump really has been pushing for, and it's one of his pet projects. And that is something that India and Saudi Arabia have talked about before. It has been put on pause because of the October 7 attacks. It was launched just a few months before when India hosted the G20 in New Delhi, which was attended by Prince Mohammed. So that is some of the big, that would be part of the initiatives that India and Saudi Arabia could likely converge on. And this would also make Trump quite happy. And, in the broader scheme of things, countries in Asia and countries in the Middle East are trying to do what they can to win favor with the Trump administration. And this visit would have been part of that had it gone through fully as Modi and his team would have hoped.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be back with Jennifer Gnana after this short break.
Today's transformation of the Middle East is at the center of global geopolitics. Whether you're an analyst, diplomat, executive, or academic, you need the best reporting and analysis to understand what's really happening on the ground and what it means for the world. Al Monitor is the award-winning independent leader in Middle East news. From Riyadh to Beirut, Abu Dhabi to Doha, and Baghdad to Tehran, our team of over 100 expert journalists report daily on the top stories driving the regional trends. Download our mobile app and subscribe to Al Monitor to follow what leaders and decision makers are reading every day. Go to almonitor.com, that's AL-MONITOR.com, and use promo code POD25, POD25 for a discount.
Okay, we're back. Jennifer, my last question is about India's relations with the Middle East as a whole. It seems to me that India under Modi pursues good relations with many different states across the region, getting along with the Gulf, like you said, but also Iran and Israel. What is India's overall goal in the Middle East?
Well, the first goal that India has is to make sure that the millions of Indians that live and work in the Middle East are safe and secure. Only in Saudi Arabia, we have 2.5 million Indian expatriates. There are millions elsewhere. and they form a key part of the remittances trade. Indians earn money in the Gulf primarily and send money to their families back in India. And given the exchange rate with the Indian rupee, this is really valuable for several Indian households. So to make sure that the Indians who live and work here are safe and protected from geopolitical turmoil is something that is of prime interest to India. So the ongoing conflict in the region is not ideal. India has previously had to evacuate hundreds of thousands of its citizens during the Gulf War from Kuwait. It was one of the largest air evacuation operations in history. And, they've had to negotiate with the Islamic State in Iraq and with the rebels in Yemen to secure the release of Indian hostages. So India is very much concerned about the safety of its citizens. Secondly, the Middle East forms the backbone of India's energy purchases when it comes to oil. Around 50% of India's crude purchases come from the Middle East. Saudi Arabia and the UAE are big suppliers, as is Iraq. So any impact on the supply of crude oil, any disruptions to the Strait of Hormuz, to Bab el-Mandeb, or even to the Indian Ocean, because the Houthis, for instance, have gone as far as the Arabian Sea, which is part of the wider body of water known as the Indian Ocean. And India is concerned about maritime security. So ensuring that the safety of its citizens, but also the safety of its energy supplies is guaranteed, is something that Modi has continued to prioritize. India's approach in terms of its broader goals, it's a country that is extremely pragmatic when it comes to its foreign policy. When it comes to Palestine, for instance, it stands for two-state solution. It hasn't changed its policy, but it also enjoys really close relationship with Israel. It also enjoys very good relations with Iran, and at the same time has maintained extremely good relations with Saudi Arabia and with the UAE. It's a really fine balance that India's foreign ministries, through successive governments, have managed and continue to do well under Modi. In terms of Modi himself, his stature and his personality is something that is well liked in the Gulf. So he seems to be able to manage his relationships from more of a personal level rather than a more bureaucratic level that previous Indian administrations had conducted their foreign policy with the Middle East.
Jennifer, thanks a lot for your time, and we look forward to more of your reporting and analyses on all things India Gulf.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Al Monitor Brief. Be sure to follow Al Monitor for more on the stories impacting the Middle East. Until next time, I'm Adam Lucente.